Okay, Chapter 7's lecture is over Latin America and the Caribbean. Obviously, one or two of the main items here for this chapter has to do with climate and the fact that as a realm, Roman Catholicism is prevalent, and that you're going to find, believe it or not, most people living in cities as opposed to rural areas. This area is called Latin America because of the influence of Latin cultures from Europe. However, you'll find in South America in particular, they're primarily Spanish, with Portuguese being the predominant language in Brazil. The Central America and Caribbean islands have a diverse, not only Hispanic Latin connection, but also African American and other European. Climate-wise, it's in the middle of all kinds of interesting activity. They call it the Intertropical Convergence Zone, where you have trade winds coming out of the east to west, bringing in hurricanes into the Gulf of Mexico, as you can see on the chart. And then you see also the subtropical high pressure that rotates on the eastern side of South America, bringing cooler water toward the shores. That's great for anchovies fishing in Chile. And with those kind of interesting relationships, it produces kind of a rain shadow effect for moisture on the eastern side of the Andes Mountains, which is that dark brown in South America. As a result of those things, you have a lot of climate hazards, storms, hurricanes in particular, not only on the eastern side but on the western side. And then you have the climate occurrence of El Nino and La Nina, either the warming of the ocean waters or the cooling of the ocean waters, and the effect it has on precipitation and rainfall, and also creating pollution areas when there's a lot of stagnant air. Obviously, a big concern in this realm, as in other parts of the world, has to do with climate change. In some places, glaciers are shrinking. In other places, the glaciers are growing. So it really varies as to where you are. The Amazon obviously cuts right through the top half of South America, producing all kinds of tropical weather. The Caribbean islands are subject to a lot of hurricanes and earthquakes and volcanoes. So you can see from the landform map, the brown areas indicate the mountains and the highland areas running from really Central America down through Panama and then into Colombia, all the way through Ecuador, Peru, and Chile, all the way down to the South Pole almost. As I said, very prone to earthquakes and volcanic activity. This is directly related to the plate boundaries, the plate tectonics that we've talked about before. And we have several plates that intersect in this area. It's a very valuable area in mineral resources, precious metals and fossil fuels. A large amount of fresh water, the large river systems, the Amazon, the Orinoco, and the Plata. There are lakes and a variety of waterfalls, so there are a lot of water down there. Many types of ecosystems you'll find in Latin America: deserts, pampas, which are grasslands, rainforests, of course, and then, of course, the animal life that exists and the domestication of some plant and animal life. This area was known to have Native Americans prior to European civilizations coming into the area. The Maya civilization, one of the oldest in areas of Central America. Then you have the Inca in Peru, the Aztec primarily in Mexico. So a lot of involvement of those ancient civilizations and their rapid decline about the time that Europeans come over. Big argument is the fate of the rainforests. As you know, the rainforests produce a lot of necessary environmental protection in terms of sucking in that carbon dioxide that we don't like and creating oxygen. But of course, it's also used for firewood. It's also used for rubber production and all kinds of things. So there's a balance between the use of those forested areas and the need to keep those forested areas from being destroyed. This map kind of shows you some of the areas in Brazil. One of the areas of deforestation is in the Amazon area. About 15% of it's been cleared, primarily because there are needs for forest trees and development for humans. Of course, there's a balance there that needs to be met, and your book talks about that. Obviously, this area was colonized by Europe, and that colonization created kind of a good news, bad news situation. When the Europeans came in, they brought all kinds of culture and problems and disease. And then the Native Americans that were there also traded with them and shared with them the good and the bad as well. So a lot of trading and exchanging of culture and ideas and technologies between the two cultures. Cash crops were introduced to Latin America by the Europeans, and coffee was one of those. Very, very important trade item for Latin America. The economy in this part of the world is shifting to an import substitution economy. The idea of free trade is very important. The United States, Mexico, and Canada signed NAFTA, which has been debatable recently in terms of the impact on the United States jobs as opposed to the impact it's having in Latin America. Some of the issues dealing with the economy that you'll read in the chapter deals with inequality. You're going to find a lot more inequality in those nation states that have a rather autocratic government style as opposed to democratic auto style. There are poverty-reducing programs going on in Brazil and Mexico, but they still have a long way to go. And of course, social and health concerns. The fly epidemic that we're hearing a lot about on the news is very prevalent in the Caribbean areas, so we have to be very careful of that. Obviously, this part of the world is uniting in some areas, and you can see the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, doing a lot of combining to share resources. The United States has a important political history in this part of the world. The Monroe Doctrine, the Panama Canal, of course, and then during the Cold War and the Communist Revolution, we have the Cuban situation. A lot of authoritarian control in this part of the world, which explains a lot of the lack of freedom and economic development. And of course, Nicaragua went from being a free state to a communist state back to a free state. Democratic movements in this area have been predominant and fleeting, I guess, at the same time. Freedom is a valuable commodity in this part of the world. One of the negative aspects of Latin America has to do with the war on drugs, and you can see the drugs that are created due to the suitable climates in Latin America, and those drugs are finding a place in the United States. I guess if you get rid of the demand and the money that can be made from the war on drugs, then maybe the drug situation would go away, but right now that's not happening. Notice that in this realm, Catholicism is very, very strong. You have basically Catholicism, some Protestant influence, a very little Muslim influence, and a lot of indigenous languages and religions. Population growth, about 596 million people as of 2011. The fertility rates have been in decline, and cultural values toward family size are also in decline. Being Roman Catholic, the idea of large families were very popular for many years, but people are beginning to realize that large families are hard to take care of economically, and so that's beginning to decline a little bit. The red dots on the map kind of show you where most people live, and as you can tell, they live primarily on the coastlines or near fresh water and flat landscapes. Okay, that's it.